Thanks for tuning into the MMA Roundtable. It is July 9th, 2013. We had a huge weekend last weekend in MMA, UFC 162, and the main event, Anderson Silva, who most regard as the greatest of all time, being dethroned by Chris Weidman. We're going to get to that first. We're also going to talk about the rest of the UFC 162 cards. It's been a couple weeks since the last roundtable. Talk about all the fight announcements. Let's do it. And thank you so much for tuning into the MMA Roundtable, the 36th MMA Roundtable. We really appreciate the support. Today we're joined by Ray, Jay, and Brooks from MMA Mental, the MMA Addiction. Ray, you want to plug MMA Mental and MMA Victor and all that good stuff first?
Yeah, we've had it's obviously been a few weeks since we've done a show together, so we've had some really good interviews on MMA Mental, so ones for people to look out for. We had a really good interview with Ross Pearson, and he told us about the behind-the-scenes scrap between one of his coaches, Aaron Beach, and George Soteropoulos, where Aaron Beach dropped George Soteropoulos. So it was interesting to hear that from Ross Pearson's mouth. We've also spoke with Stipe Miocic about 3 or 4 days after his big win over Roy Nelson, so that was great to get that interview. This week, if you get to check out this week's show, I spoke to Ian Freeman this week. He was due to fight Ken Shamrock over in the UK, but Ken Shamrock ducked him again, and now he's fighting Rico Rodriguez, the former UFC heavyweight champion. And I'm due to speak to John Anik tomorrow, which should be a fun interview as well. It's always fun speaking to somebody who's so heavily involved in the UFC.
For sure. We also got our boy Jay Jeans. You have any plugs, sir?
I actually don't. I haven't been doing the early stoppage for a few weeks now. I've been busy as all hell. I just had a marathon 3 weeks ago, and I got one in 2 weeks. Triathlon, not marathon. That'd be killer. But yeah, I've also got a marathon, so I'm literally dying here. So I don't have time to be giving you any early stoppages. But I aim to be back, hopefully in September. If not, for sure in October. All I can do is say sorry to everybody. I doubt anybody actually cares too much. But man, either way, I'm sorry. I've just been too busy, guys.
And we also got Brooks Bailey on the show. What's going on, Brooks?
Hey, not much, Jake. You can catch me on at the MMA Addiction on Twitter. Not usually very active on there. I got to get up on that. You can also get us on Facebook at the MMA Addiction page. I also want to give a shout out to my boy Cracker Stew. You can catch him on Reverb Nation. Check him out. He's got some pretty good shit. So I'm looking forward to the show today, guys.
For sure. And we got a lot to get to. Obviously, the first thing I want to get to, Anderson Silva and Chris Weidman. Anderson Silva, 16-0 in the UFC, 10 title defenses, and that's where it stopped for him last night. He was ducking and dodging around. We will talk about the fight itself, for the next probably 45 minutes, but just a quick recap of the fight. The first round, most people had going toward Weidman because of a takedown he had in the first part of the round. Actually, it started off as a sprawl, but he sprawled a little too far, almost like Anderson Silva's face was right about where Weidman's butt was, and Weidman was able to pick Silva up, drop him, and get in his guard. The later half of the round featured Silva just sort of toying with Weidman. He only landed 9 signature strikes in the first round, 5 in the second round. And that was really the story of the fight. Silva was jumping around, sort of, like he did against Bonner and Maia. Did the same thing he did against Bonner, where he backed himself up against the cage and then went back to it and said, "Come on, fight me." The second round, it was more the same, just juking, dodging around, and Weidman threw a beautiful combination. When Silva usually ducks and dodges and leans back, what he's doing is trying to lure his guy into throwing a left-right-left or a right-left-right combo, just swing wildly at him, and that's when he comes in and pops him. Weidman threw a left, right, and then that last left hook he swung in with, caught Silva clean, knocked him out. If you watch the instant replay in slow-mo, his eyes roll up and get wonky as he falls to the ground. Dean wisely steps in and calls the fight over. 118 into the second round. Chris Weidman shocking the world, taking the middleweight championship, ending what is arguably the greatest streak in MMA history, if not definitely one of the greatest streaks, belonging to one of the greatest fighters ever. This fight definitely stacks up there with Fabricio Verdun beating Fedor, with Matt Serra beating GSP. When Weidman initially knocked out Anderson Silva, what was your first reaction, Ray?
I was screaming at my telly. I was like, oh my God. I just couldn't take it in what was going on, but I was up on my feet. I was jumping. I was cheering. I was absolutely over the fucking moon.
I don't think people predicted Weidman to win, which is understandably. I don't think anybody expected him to win the way he did, which it blew me away. You had the greatest of all time, and he's right then in his comfort zone, and then is knocked out clean. I don't even think Weidman expected it to be finished like that. I think looking back, Silva probably didn't expect it. Nobody could have predicted that at that moment on the feet, Weidman was going to knock him out with a punch. It was crazy. That's what it was.
Yeah, there's really nothing more else to say about, what everybody. I believe the reaction out of everybody was probably the same. We all knew that, Weidman had a decent shot at winning the fight, but like Jay was saying, I don't think anybody had thought that Weidman could win the fight like he did with that knockout. We were all just, astonished and, up and hollering and holy shit. And it was just amazing.
And even though it was an amazing knockout, my first reaction, a lot of cussing, a lot of what the fuck, holy shits. But, so Weidman knocks out Silva. What everyone was talking about, though, was not Weidman's knockout. It was the fact that Silva was dodging and diving around. Weidman and a lot of Weidman fans, and just a lot of MMA fans, say that what Silva was doing was not showboating, it's strategy, it's what lures people in, it's how he beats people. I mean, he doesn't beat people, he destroys them by messing with them, luring them in, almost like a Nick Diaz, and then striking. Was this a sound strategy that just, didn't work, or did Anderson Silva beat himself? Sort of was the outcome of this fight more Weidman winning it, or Anderson losing it and throwing it away? Jay?
It's a brilliant question. I've been talking to Jake quite a bit this week about the fight. Silva had his opportunities. He gives fighters opportunities. He against Bonner, he let him take him up against the fence and he let him stand back there. He gives people these opportunities. And there was this moment in the fight whereby Weidman had just thrown, he threw the second to last right. He goes over the top. Right then, Silva's hands are still down. If you look at the Griffin fight, you've got the opposite stance. Griffin's just throwing a left, and again, he's off balance. Silva in this fight chose not to throw the overhand right or the left straight or right straight. He chooses to let Weidman finish the technique. And it was Silva letting Weidman into the fight. He had all the opportunities in the Bonner fight. We saw the knee to the stomach. There was moments where Weidman was shaky, where he had him up against the clinch. Silva he didn't seize any opportunity. He allowed Weidman to get into the fight. Weidman wasn't intimidated, which was the main thing. And now that all the smoke is gone, yes, Weidman is the champion, but Silva clearly had the game plan to embarrass the UFC for 25 minutes, say that this is the best you've got to give me, and he can't even compete. And instead of just finishing him like he could have done against Belfort or Bonner or anyone else down the line, Lieben, he decides to let this guy into the fight. He decides to try and make the fight last longer. And as a result, he gets caught, and nobody can stay in with the best level of competition forever and not expect that somebody's going to give him a threat. And, he popped him fair and he was out.
All right, can you fuckers hear me?
Yeah. Fucker.
I think I cut out last time, fucker. But no, I don't think that. I think Weidman won this fight, or Weidman won this fight. I don't think that Anderson lost it, or however you guys are trying to put it. But Weidman, everybody knew, like I was saying, everybody knew that he had a decent shot going into this fight. He's not a pushover or a slouch, and Anderson does that in a lot of his fights. Not all of his fights, but almost all of them, a lot of them. And Weidman obviously was the wrong guy to try that with. I don't think that you want to do that with someone on that level, and he fucked up. But all credit to Weidman. I don't want to take anything away from him. He won this fight. He did what he had to do to get it.
I agree with Brooks. At the end of the day, all Weidman can do is fight his opponent. Whoever's in that cage next to him, it's up to him to fight. If Silva's game plan, I think Silva doesn't take the fight seriously because he is that much better than most of his opponents. And we've seen him do this before. And the thing is, when you do it and win, you look awesome. You really do. And he looked awesome against Bonner. He looked awesome against Griffin. We've seen him. He looks amazing when he pulls it off. When you do it and lose, you look like a real idiot. And he just made himself look silly at the weekend because he was there doing all his head wobbling, dancing, and trying to make Weidman look like he was nothing. And all of a sudden, he was out cold. He paid the ultimate price for showing pretty much, zero respect for his opponent. And the only person he made look stupid wasn't the UFC, wasn't Weidman. All he made look stupid was Anderson Silva, which is a shame because obviously the guy's amazing and what he's done is amazing. But for now, all everyone's talking about is the fact that he danced his way to a knockout, which was just unbelievable.
Yeah, that was goddamn ridiculous. All right, so a lot of people are talking about it. Obviously, Ramses is talking about it, saying that this fight was in fact a work. Not necessarily that the UFC fixed the fight, even though a lot of those people think the UFC does fix a lot of fights. But a lot of people were just saying that Silva wanted to lose, that he let Weidman hold his belt, that he was interviewed before the fight and said that he wanted Weidman to knock him out. Do you put any credence in either the theory that the UFC fixed it or that Silva just wasn't trying to win? Or do you really believe Silva went out there, fought, won 100% and lost? I believe the latter. I think it's silly. If Silva didn't want to win, he would have retired. He wouldn't have signed a 10-fight contract if he didn't want to win. As far as the people who think the UFC fixes fights, you're goddamn insane. You know why they don't fix fights? Because in order to fix fights over time, you have to have so many people in on it, so many fighters paid off. If one of these people goes to TMZ, writes a book, tells a friend when he's drunk, whatever, if one of these stories leaks and the UFC is defrauded as fixing fights, they would lose 90% of their fan base. It turns into the WWE, and the Fertittas and Dana White probably get sued for millions and billions by all the state athletic boards when they find out that they were trying to commission fights that were fixed. So yeah, that's my rant on fixed fights. Brooks, was this shit a work?
What a fucking joke, man. The shit disgusts me when people try to, I guess, come up with some bullshit to make themselves feel better about a great fighter like Anderson Silva, or their favorite fighter, losing after 7 or 8 years or however long it's been. I just think it's ridiculous. Give credit to Chris Weidman. Everybody knew going into the fight he had a great shot. Like I said, there's no fucking way that this was a work, and there's no way that Anderson Silva threw the fight. Like I already said, he does that shit in all of his, well, not all of his fights, but almost all of his fights. and he did it to the wrong person this time. He did it to the guy that was game, and I just think it's ridiculous. And I'm tired of hearing, people talk this stupid shit. So I hope they have a rematch. And if anybody can do it, Anderson can win his title back. But I just want Chris Weidman to prove that the shit wasn't a fluke, and Anderson didn't throw that fight.
Powerful. This wasn't a word. What happened in this fight was Anderson Silva was complacent. We've seen it happen before in all sports where we've seen championship teams, and obviously from the UK we've got soccer over here. We've seen championship teams lose to low-level teams because they get complacent. They don't take it seriously. Anderson Silva has got complacence for quite a lot of his recent fights, and it's not been an issue for him because he's made good people look bad. He's made good fighters look bad because of he is on another level. But the fact of the matter is, Weidman is a great fighter. I mean, I've been harping on for ages that Weidman's got the style to beat Anderson Silva, and I've been saying this for months, even before the fight was announced. And we had me and Brooks and Luke Barnett did a show a few days before the event, and Luke and Brooks both said that Silva's going to win. I said Weidman will win, and Luke called me mad. But, Chris Weidman is good. And the thing is, you give them a rematch in a few months' time, which we're going to talk about that, but it looks like that's going to happen. Weidman's going to be training. Weidman's going to be getting better. Weidman's so young, he's going to get better and better and better. I think Silva's already at his best that he can be. He's not going to get any better than what he is. I mean, the guy's amazing. This reminds me a bit of the old BJ Penn Frankie Edgar thing. Everyone was unsure at the first fight. Frankie Edgar won, should he have won? When they rematch, you've got BJ Penn coming down, Frankie Edgar on the way up. Edgar was so much better than Penn, it was unbelievable. If they rematch, I've got Weidman to win again. This wasn't a fluke. Weidman won that first round, and then when Silva was pissing around, Weidman knocked him out. That's exactly what happened.
You say you could predict it from miles off, Ray. You, like probably the most of us, whoever picked him to win did not predicted him to take him down and keep him down or sub him out or TKO him on the ground.
Yeah, I didn't think he'd knock him out on the feet. I thought it'd be a TKO on the ground. That's
what I mean. But anyway, getting back to the question, it left. I don't really know where to begin with this one. It just appeared deep down that it seems like he's given up. You've got to think about this guy. He's been champion for 6 years. Now, I understand that, it's his job and all this, but Nick Diaz can't be bothered to show up to one press conference. Imagine that when you main evented 15 UFC shows, he's got to fly over to America to do the whole, not just the promotion, but get the shots of, the face-to-face, all this sort of stuff. He's had to do that for 15 times. He's defended the belt 10 times. The whole situation is, you dream of being a champion. Not everybody... It gets hard to motivate yourself when you want to remain the champion. It's easy to become champion, but to keep the belt is something else. He kept the belt, and that's probably why when he walked into the cage, he was coasting. It did look like in the back of his head he was kind of done. It was by no means a work. I think he wanted the easiest path to victory, and he didn't seize the moment, and he cost for it. So when he did lose, he was respectful. He was just like, yeah, Weidman's the champion now. I don't think in the age of 38, as he said, he mentioned his family. I think that's understandable. He's got all the money in the world right now. He doesn't need to be taking time out to be, the UFC's poster boy anymore. It's not his job to be doing that anymore. He's got children to look after. It's the whole reason Brock Lesnar, he was never as incredible a fighter as he could have been, because he wanted to see his family and spend time with his family. He never moved out to other camps. I think Silva it's gotten to him. He's spent a lot of time working for this, and he finally, when he did lose, he just accepted that's it. He doesn't want to be doing the 5-round main events anymore. He'll happily be 3 rounds against somebody just as incredible, but not have to do all the promotion for it. I think he coasted. It was by no means a work. He just showed up and only gave 80%. That's my genuine feeling.
For sure, yeah. And to a key on Weidman for a moment, he's beaten the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter And a lot of people are wondering now, where does Chris Weidman belong in the pound-for-pound talk? Currently, the official UFC.com rankings, which I think is somebody's bonehead this week. Currently, John Jones has moved up to number 1, GSP to number 2. Anderson Silva, even though he lost, he's still number 3. Jose Aldo 4, Benson Henderson 5, followed by Kane, Mighty Mouse, Barao, Cruz. And then Chris Weidman at number 10. Does Chris Weidman deserve to be on the pound-for-pound list? Basically, in my opinion, as far as the schedule go, or as far as the strength of schedule goes, a sort of football term, the quality of opponents. He's beaten one quality opponent. I think Mark, when he fought him before, was coming off of that injury, just did not look impressive at all. He looked like a completely different fighter in the Boach fight. He fought Maya at middleweight, who never really proved to be anything, and before that, just a bunch of bums. Lawler is decent, but he's way overmatched than Lawler, Bongfeld, Sakara. But I really think Chris should be 5 or 6 on the pound for pound list. I think GSP, Jones, Aldo, Barao all deserve spots above him. Maybe Kane, but he's really made a statement. Benson, he has done a good job, but his last fight was very close. That second fight against Edgar, very close. He could have lost it either time. Weidman just finished the best of all time, and I think he should be ranked above Anderson Silva. He beat him. He should be ranked above him. Who's up? Ray? Where does Chris Weidman...
I'm just going to jump in to explain this, because Nate Diaz, Josh Thompson beat Nate Diaz. I went and researched why this happens. It's because not every single person has updated their rankings, meaning that they've kept the old rankings still there.
Anderson Silva's number 1 on their rankings.
Yes, so when you're when you're evaluating points, he will still be getting 10 points from him, and Chris Weidman hasn't got everybody. The points haven't been reevaluated, basically.
A bunch of bums. Update your rankings. Thank you for the update, though, Ray.
My views, whenever I've done rankings, I've always gone on the basis of to be the man, you've got to beat the man. So I've never understood a ranking where, for example, where you've got, I don't know, say Damian Maia recently fought John Fitch. Now, John Fitch has got a better record at welterweight up until obviously the Bertman fight, but for me, because Maia beat Fitch the way he did, Maia automatically moves above Fitch in the rankings. That's the way I've always based my rankings. Obviously, it gets a little bit complicated when you've got a triangle one where A beats B, B beats C, C beats A, but then you go by the latest... you go by the latest... Is that creepy man blowing into the mic gone? You go by the latest... You go by the latest fight. So for me, at the moment, Weidman moves above Silva because Weidman beat Silva. And he beat him convincingly. There was 2 rounds in that fight. He won the first round on points. I think one judge gave it to Silva, which we all know is idiotic, because Silva didn't do anything and Weidman took him down. And in the second round, he knocked him out. So for me, he moves above him. Where I would do the rankings at the minute, because Silva was number 1, I would drop him down and I would put Jones at number 1. And I'd probably put Weidman in at number 2 and Silva at number 3 and then go down from there. That's how, personally, I would do it.
For me, the way I look at pound for pound is I look at it as if size wasn't a factor, who would be the best? So John Jones, if you dropped him down to lightweight, he'd still have a reach advantage, but it wouldn't be as... he still wouldn't be 6'3" anymore. He'd just be 20% bigger than the opponent. And so when you consider that, you looked at what Weidman's weaknesses were on the weekend. You've got to consider Jose Aldo and Renan Barao. They would be able to kick his legs out, because Silva's leg kicks were working for him, and he only managed to get 1 takedown on Silva, and he attempted, I think, 3. So you've got to assume, for me, that Aldo and Barao would be above above. Benson Henderson, I think, would be able to outstrike him, especially if he started using his taekwondo. So I've got Chris Weidman. I've probably got him above Cain Velasquez. He's probably a bit more well-rounded. I mean, the elbow and the fact his grappling game is a lot more diverse than Velasquez. But then you've got to also consider pound for pound. Velasquez only really needs to, in the heavyweight division, punch people in the face. So Cain's always going to be lower. So I don't know, I've got him about 5th or maybe 6th around there. But right now, I think you've got to give the edge. For me, it's GSP, but very closely with John Jones behind.
When it comes to pound for pound talk, it's all really subjective. There's so many different definitions and opinions about it. So, I mean, it's really not a huge deal to me, the pound for pound rankings. But, even though Weidman just knocked out Anderson Silva, it's been a long time since Anderson Silva has even, came close to losing. If just me, I'd probably still put Anderson above Chris Weidman. I want to see a rematch personally, but if he could do it a second time, then I would say that Weidman does belong, up in the top 3 at least. But right now, I'd still put him outside the top 5.
For sure, yeah, and no one defines their pound for pound list the same way. Personally, I don't really look at whether they could move around weight classes or not, because that would, make a big heavyweight basically not eligible to be on the pound for pound weight list, or a small flyweight. Really, I just look at 3 different things with the pound for pound thing. I look at just straight wins and losses, in the last 10 fights. If they're 10-0, that's a huge factor. Strength of opponents. Have they fought the best in their division? Have the best in their division been good guys? I mean, Tito and Jones, look at the guys that they fought to defend their belt 5 times. Jones fought the cream of the crop. Tito fought a bunch of bums. So your wins and losses, obviously, strength of opponents, and, whether you eke out a split judge's nod or whether you knock the guy out in the first round. Dominance in the fights themselves. And everyone factors those in, with different weights. I think dominance as far as finishing fights matters a lot. That's why I had Anderson, Jones, GSP 1, 2, 3, and now I have Jones and GSP and Aldo. Aldo with 1 or 2 more wins could vault over GSP, because even though GSP, he has fought good guys and he hasn't lost a fight in forever, and he hasn't lost a round in forever. He usually dominates the guys, but at the same time, it's just his lack of being able to finish a guy really factors in, and feels almost like a wrestling match watching GSP fight at times. Alright, so Weidman, Anderson, both of them probably belong in the top 10 pound for pound, and Dana White has been pushing a rematch, hinting for maybe UFC 168 at the end of the year. Silva said after the fight he's not interested in the title. He doesn't want a rematch. Obviously, a lot of guys have been emotional in the cage and taken back what they said right after a fight. I mean, I can't think. There's countless guys who have retired after a loss and come back and fought again. Will we get a rematch next? Will Anderson Silva and Chris Weidman's next fight be a rematch? Weidman Silva too. White was saying that even though the super fights are now gone because Silva's out of the mix, there is obviously this Silva Weidman 2 rematch that would be absolutely huge, almost as huge as a super fight. Jay, do we get a rematch next? I say we do, just because there's so much money there. Dana's gonna get what he wants.
It's going to be a question of whether, even if we do get a rematch, as I said before, Anderson Silva's motivation. If we do see a rematch, then I think Silva will probably, I would be Well, I guess you're going to ask that next, but I'd be picking Silva to win and then retire after it, just to put it all on the line, just get it out of the way. He clearly doesn't want to be doing this full time anymore. As he said at the end of the match, he's got 10 fights left, but he really doesn't sound like he wants to fight them. He just sounded like he was done. So even if the rematch does happen, then yeah, fair enough. But who really, if the rematch doesn't happen, who else is he going to fight in those 10 fights? What, an out-of-shape Shogun? An out of prime Rashad? Who are these 10 guys he's going to fight who aren't named Chris Weidman? I mean, he may as well just have this one fight, go all out at it, and then retire. And yeah, he can make big money on it. But I think he's either done or it'll be done after after the Roy Jones Jr. fight. It's all a bit of a weird one, isn't it?
I think that we will get a rematch. I think that he has to ponder it. Maybe he'll want to take a few extra months off compared to what he usually does. I don't know, but I do think we'll get the rematch. That'll be Anderson's next fight, and they were saying that the super fights are out the window now that Anderson lost. If we don't get the rematch, I don't think the super fights are out the window. I'd still love to see Anderson Silva versus John Jones or Anderson Silva versus GSP, which, we all know is a long shot. But, I've heard Anderson before say that he could still drop down to 170, which would just be ridiculous. But, no, I think that we're going to get the rematch. And, I'm looking forward to it. I hope we get the rematch.
I think we'll get a rematch as well. I've heard rumours it's going to be UFC 168, I think I saw. I'm not that fussed about seeing a rematch. Weidman won. Let him have his moment. Let him move on and fight some other challengers. And for ages, we want to see these super fights. Now he's not a champion. Let him go on and fight some of the 205 guys. Give him a big 205 fighter and let him fight then if he wins that for the title. That's what I'd like to see with Anderson. If they do rematch, I'll be picking Weidman again. I'll be rooting for Weidman again.
All right, and if we do see the rematch, just hypothetically, say it happens, simply put, who do you think wins? Personally, I wanted to pick Weidman, but I just could not let myself pick against the greatest of all time. So I went with Silva, and Weidman beat him. This time around, I'm not going to make the same mistake. I'm going for Chris Weidman. If they rematch, who do you cocksuckers got?
Cocksuckers.
I would, I think if anybody can beat Chris Weidman right now in the middleweight division, it would be Anderson Silva. So I do think he has a legitimate shot. But I would also take Chris Weidman. And just for the record, there's a lot of people out there saying that Anderson Silva should not get an immediate rematch, like he doesn't deserve it. And I think that's just absolutely ridiculous also. As long as he spent as the champion, he's done it longer than anyone else, held that title reign longer than anyone else, and I just think it's just out of respect. I mean, he gave every challenger their chance. He definitely fought injured. I don't remember him ever pulling out of a fight when it was scheduled. You've got to give him an instant rematch if he wants it. I think it's absolutely ludicrous for people to be saying that he does not deserve an immediate rematch, especially considering all the people that have gotten immediate rematches that, really didn't deserve them. So I'd pick Chris Weidman in a rematch, and I hope it happens.
After what Brooks has just said, I changed my mind. I think Brooks is right. I think he is, he's still up there as being a possible GOAT. So yeah, if he wants the rematch, then he should have it. And in a way, it works out better, because if Weidman beats him again, then everyone will say that it wasn't a fluke, which is what happened with Edgar and BJ Penn. I think there'll be a rematch, and I think Weidman will win.
If it takes place within the next 6 months, I'll give it to Silva still. But if it takes place longer than that, Chris Weidman's going to have improved an absolute ton. Either way, if the fight does go down, I think, like as I said earlier, Silva will retire after. That's with a win or loss, I think. But whoever's out there saying Silva doesn't deserve it, this guy's 16-1 in the UFC. I can't think of any other middleweight who's got that record. He's also got the most wins by knockout, which is 11. Come on, guys, who are you really thinking is better? Who's more deserving of a rematch than Anderson Silva? Let's be honest, 16-1. There's nobody out there with that record.
Yeah, and Weidman is actually now one of only 2 UFC champions who are undefeated. He and Ronda Rousey, which I wonder why people don't talk about Ronda Rousey on the pound for pound list. We'll save that for a future conversation. Yeah, Weidman and Rousey, the only undefeated champions. Jones, you could argue, is an undefeated champion, but he's got that loss for cracking Matt Hamill's face like an egg, basically. All right, so we were talking about who we're picking if the rematch happens. If the rematch doesn't happen, let's talk about the possibilities for either guy. What's next for Weidman? What's next for Silva? For Weidman, I think the obvious choice would be Vitor. Dana White apparently has told him no. Apparently he's been told no. But if Anderson doesn't happen, Vitor is the only one that makes sense. Vitor, Yushin, if he beats Jacare, Bisping, but Vitor just knocked out Bisping recently, so I think Vitor would be the obvious choice if Weidman doesn't face Silva next. What's next for Silva? There's a lot of interesting options. He could fight at 185 or 205. He was saying he didn't want to fight for the belt. If he stayed at 185, a fight against Bisping is interesting stylistically. That could actually pose a threat for Silva. A rematch against Vitor, obviously. If he moves up to 205, I don't know. Maybe fighting the winner of Chael Sonnen and Shogun Rua. That would be a really fun fight. I don't know if you'd give him a title contender match. Maybe let him fight Rashad Evans. We were talking about Rashad maybe moving to middleweight not long ago and fighting Anderson Silva. That was before he got knocked out by Little Nog. A lot of possible things could happen. If we don't get the rematch, who's next for either guy, Ray?
If it's not going to be a rematch for Chris Weidman, I think the fairest challenger, in my opinion, has got to be Vitor Belfort. I mean, the guy's on a phenomenal run. He's 2 head kick knockouts in his last 2 fights against top opponents. I mean, these guys that he fought were top of the rankings, so these aren't he's not fighting any bums. He's fighting the best in the world, and he knocked them out in such impressive fashion. So if there's any justice, it should be him. For some reason, Dana White said it's not going to be him, which seems ridiculous. But maybe it's because of the whole thing with the TRT and him fighting in Brazil. Maybe that's why he's doing it rather than the fighting thing. I mean, the rumours are that Michael Bisping's going to be fighting in the UK in Manchester in October. Maybe they'll bring Weidman over. That the timing on that would be pretty good, and he could fight Bisping. Maybe they'll bring Silva over. He could fight Bisping, of course, at that weight class. If I could pick Silva's next opponent, he's on about going to boxing and fighting Roy Jones Jr. I mean, that would be phenomenal. But if he stays within the UFC, I'd like to see him go up to 205 and fight Rashad Evans. And if he wins that fight, give him a title fight against John Jones.
As far as everything looks like it's happening, is Silva and Weidman is Dana White wants it to be at UFC 168. It's going to depend on Silva's recovery and whether he actually wants to fight. But that would be, I think that's the New Year's Eve show. I'm not even sure, to be honest. Whatever. I think that's what he's looking at the moment. If it's not going to be Silva, apparently before the fight, Dana White was saying Vitor Belfort isn't next. He'd consider Dan Henderson before he'd consider Vitor Belfort, which is even stranger. So maybe Bisping, maybe the order is something like Silva, Henderson, Belfort, on the same level as Bisping. I don't really have a clue. I think stylistically, everybody's a good fight. He's a brand new champion. Anybody's a good fight. But as for Silva, I don't know, man. And if he doesn't get the Weidman fight, then yeah, Roy Jones Jr. is probably next. Dana White said he's talking to Roy Jones Jr. about them scheduling a UFC boxing match, something along those lines. Not sure how that would work. I don't really have a clue, but I think he should just fight Weidman one more time, then retire, in my eyes.
For Chris Weidman, if they don't fight each other, like everybody's saying, the obvious fight is Vitor Belfort. Personally, I'm not a fan of Vitor. If they do fight, I hope that they would fight in the States. Even, you know what, I really don't even care. I think that even if they did fight in Brazil and Vitor was able to get his TRT pass, I still think that Weidman would just annihilate him anyway. I just think that Weidman's that much better. And, if it's not Vitor, because that's what Dana White's saying, I really have no reason to. I don't think they have any reason to give it to anybody else at this point. I guess the winner of Jacare Okami would make a lot of sense. But other than that, I don't see anybody else. As for Anderson Silva, if he's not going to take the rematch, I don't find any interesting fights for him down at 185. I'd rather see him fight at 205. I'd like to see him fight someone like Shogun or, Henderson or whoever. Just somebody that is a little more interesting, because we've seen him just, annihilate everybody at middleweight. So Rashad Evans was a good one that he threw out there. That would be a great fight to find out a number one contender at light heavyweight, and obviously set up that fight between Jones and Silva. That would just be awesome. So that's what I think about the situation.
Yeah, and how much of a shame is it that we've got this new champion and he's from the state of New York? How awesome would that be to have him have a homecoming fight in MSG, the state where he's from? He's from Long Island. Nope, unfortunately, MMA politics are that corrupt that MMA is not going to happen as long as this Shelby guy is still in office. It's really damn.
Can I throw this up here real quick, because I know that Rashad Evans had said if there was an interesting matchup for him at 185, he would contemplate making the move. So if they're saying that Vitor Belfort's not going to get that fight, maybe that's along the lines of their plans, having Rashad move down to 185 now that he's coming off of a win and taking the immediate title shot. That's just an option.
Yeah, you really have a ton of guys who can fight at those two weights, middleweight and 205. So we'll definitely see. It'll be interesting to find out if the rematch doesn't happen, what'll go down. All right, I know we've been talking about this topic ad nauseum, but it is definitely probably the biggest story of the year so far. If Anderson Silva retired right now, is he the greatest of all time? I say he is. Jay?
This is a interesting one, because right before the fight, I had a massive debate whether Anderson Silva, in my eyes, needed this fight to secure his legacy as the greatest of all time. If you look at it, as I've said before, in about 10, 20 years, Ray picked Chris Weidman. All you've got to do, by the sounds of most people, in most people's eyes, is have this NCAA wrestling championship. You've got to be able to do jiu-jitsu, have a solid jiu-jitsu base. And, there's guys out there with that. There's Nick Fichetti. You need to have crisp striking. You need to have a good chin. And all these factors come together. And in 10, 20 years, people are going to be saying, the Eric Kochs right now, people are going to say, is the middleweight Eric Koch the equivalent of that guy? People are going to be saying, oh, he could have beat Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva, in my eyes, needed this fight to secure his legacy as the greatest of all time. Now, he did it because he defended the two takedown defenses that people said he wouldn't have been able to do. He did that, but then he still lost the fight. So, in my eyes, I'm on the fence, but right now, I still think it's got to be Fedor. But GSP, I guess, is down. Yeah, I guess it's down to GSP.
I don't know what you're talking about. You're talking about Eric Koch and shit. But I'm going to say that it's really a dead heat between Silva, Fedor, and GSP. And maybe even John Jones here in the future, but I really couldn't pick one from the other. He's definitely one of those guys that could be considered the GOAT. I don't know which one it would be though.
I'd have to remove GSP from that because I don't think GSP's done enough to be the GOAT. GSP wins his fights by holding people down and winning by decision. Silva and Fedor were both guys that destroyed opponents. Again, Fedor lost a few fights towards the end of his career, but Fedor in his prime, the Pride FC Fedor, he was like a Terminator. I mean, he was phenomenal. For me, if you put me on the spot now and say if I could pick one fighter, the greatest of all time for mixed martial arts, if I was to pick right now, this moment, I would pick Anderson Silva still, regardless of the result of the weekend.
I'm in the same boat as you, Ray. All right, just a couple more topics about this fight. Chris Weidman has now had the belt for 3 days. How long will he hold it for? Will he lose it later this year in a rematch? Will he lose it in 2014? I say he holds it until 2015. And I don't know who he loses it to when he loses, but I think he holds it for a little while. Brooks?
If Anderson doesn't take it in a rematch, I think Weidman holds it for a long time. I don't think there's anybody else in the division right now that can beat him. It would have to be somebody that's on the come up that we haven't seen yet, or that just improves a whole lot. So I say he holds it for at least a few years. 2015 sounds, all right, maybe 2016, but like I said, it's going to have to be someone that either has a lot of improvement or just we haven't seen yet that comes in and is just a beast.
It's a hard one to say because you don't know how often he's going to defend and who he's going to defend against. But for me now, discounting remove Anderson Silva from the equation because Anderson Silva is phenomenal. If they fight again, any of them can win. But for me, anyone else in that division, I don't see who is capable at the moment in the UFC of beating Chris Weidman. So, like Brooke said, it's going to have to be someone that we haven't seen yet. Somebody drops down from 205 maybe and makes a weight, but we've seen people drop down in weight before, and they don't normally make the impact because they don't always make the impact because they don't deal with the weight cut very well, or it's somebody who improves massively. You look at someone who's improved massively recently. The one that jumps out, of course, is Mark Munoz after the weekend performance. But for me at the minute, I don't see who beats Weidman.
I mean, yeah, you've all brought up good points in this one. Anderson Silva, I think if they rematch, I would be picking Anderson Silva. I won't deny that. But outside of that, I mean, the same thing goes for Anderson that it does for Bisping. Unless they fight him within the next 6 months, then Weidman's going to have improved leaps and bounds. So I wouldn't give them either of a shot within 6 months, maybe. Vitor Belfort, he could take it within the next year, but then after that, I mean, you've got, I guess, maybe Jacare. Jacare could take it. I think though, I'll give him 2 years, 2 to 3 years. I think somebody will come up, although there is no names right now who really stand out. He is a prodigy in himself. I don't see who can do it. I don't see who can pull it off right now. Maybe even somebody like Kennedy maybe in the future, but he's still got leaps and bounds to go. I think all of you guys got it right. Right now, there's not many people out there who could do it.
Yeah, and finally, before this weekend, there had been 8 title fights in the UFC, and all those title fights had been successful defenses of those titles. This was the first champion to lose in 2013, and all the champions are actually slated to fight in 2013 currently. You have Kane versus Dos Santos 3, you have Jones versus Gustafsson, you have St. Pierre versus Hendricks, you have Benson versus Grant, you have Aldo versus Zombie, you have Barao versus Wineland, you have Mighty Mouse, Moraga, and Rousey Tate 2. All of them are scheduled to fight. Which champion is going to lose their belt next? Do you think all the fights I have mentioned are going to be won by the champ, or do you think a belt gets passed along again? I think it does. I think Johnny Hendricks defeats George St. Pierre, and I think GSP is going to be the next guy who loses his belt. Ray?
I think there's going to be 2 bouts that are going to change hands out of all those fights. I've been saying, like you've just said there, I've been saying for a long time that Hendricks has got the style to beat GSP, so I think he will. But I've just gone through and looked at the order of the matchups, and before they're due to fight, Benson Henderson and TJ Grant are due to fight. And for me, TJ Grant has looked phenomenal. He looks like, we talk about we need to get a fighter who just improves out of nowhere. That's TJ Grant. That is exactly what he's done. I mean, what he did in his last fight, his last 2 fights, to be honest with you, against Matt Wyman, and then, of course, a massive step up in competition against Gray Maynard. I mean, we've seen Gray Maynard go 5 rounds with Frankie Edgar, and then eventually he got caught and knocked out. We've never seen anyone do to Gray Maynard what TJ Grant did to him. I mean, TJ Grant toyed with him along the cage. So I think TJ Grant's going to be the next guy to take a title. I think he'll beat Benson Henderson.
Sorry, I thought Brooks was up for some reason. This is another really interesting one because you have got a lot of title fights, and I think I really will be wishing Hendricks pulls it off. I think after the second round comes, if he hasn't done it by then it's GSPs all day. Pettis versus Aldo, I thought Pettis was going to take Aldo for sure. I was pretty confident on that one, and that's no longer booked. So in actual fact, I'm going to pull a dodgy answer because Shake didn't give it to us. But I'm going to be saying Dominic Cruz. Dominic Cruz, he will either, whether he loses it to Barao or he gets stripped of it, either way, it will be him to lose the belt within the next 6 months or so.
You would answer on a technicality, you son of a bitch.
For me, I don't think GSP is going to lose. The technical striking from George St. Pierre is going to be way too much for Johnny Hendricks to handle. He's got that big overhand that, you guys have already said it. GSP plays it way safe, and he's going to be expecting that, and he's going to be making sure that doesn't hit. And I know everybody else has in the past, but we're talking about George St. Pierre, and it's not going to be George St. Pierre. I think there's a couple different options. Demetrius Johnson at 125. I don't think he'll lose it to Moraga, but I think in the future, if he fights Joey B again, I think that Benavidez will have a good chance of taking that belt. And other than that, I do think that TJ Grant has a great shot at taking Benson Henderson. So, I guess that comes first. I'll say that Benson loses to TJ.
True enough. We got a lot of support for Hendricks and Grant on this podcast, it sounds like. All right, we will talk about the rest of this card, but first and foremost, we got to get to our Boneheads of the Week.
Boom, 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 boom. Now tell me what you gonna do, but it ain't no better problem.
All right, my bonehead of the week is Sports Illustrated for posting a story asking the question, was the Silva-Weidman fight a work? Look, when Ramses says it, I accept it, because Ramses is Ramses. Ramses is the master of the MMA conspiracy game. Sports Illustrated, leave it up to Ramses to cook up retarded MMA conspiracies. I'm sorry, Ramses, I love you. But Sports Illustrated, what the fuck are you doing, man? Like, this is like if, try and imagine if, I'm trying to think, what's a crazy boxing upset, like, back in the 60s or 70s? Like, alright, when Buster Douglas knocked out, or didn't, when Buster beat Tyson, it's like if everybody afterwards said, oh, was it a work? Did they fix this fight? Imagine Sports Illustrated printing a story asking if it was a work. This is, as a reputable magazine, they shouldn't be even messing with that stuff. Even trying to imply that the UFC is, a rigged company. Jay?
Mine is looking at the UFC rankings. I mean, I know I tried to explain myself earlier on the whole the way that it's set up, but here's the top 10 list they released. I think it was 40 hours after the match, real quickly, just to throw out there. How it works is you've got the champion who isn't even listed, and then you've got the top 10. So you had Boach at 10, Sonnen at 9, Munoz at 8, Rockhold at 7, Philippou at 6, 5 Souza, 4 Bisping, 3 Akami, 2 Belfort, 1 the interim champion Chris Weidman, and the champion Anderson Silva. Who the hell messed that up? I mean, Really? They had him down as the interim champion? This was 40 hours after the fight. Surely somebody would have picked that up, that something wasn't right. It's somebody's job to update this thing. They clearly weren't paying attention. They're clearly an Anderson Silva fan and decided he's still the champion. Weidman only took the interim championship. What the hell is going on?
That's absolutely ridiculous. My bonehead of the week is the king of dance, the king of rock and roller, the king of moving your head, ducking and diving, the king of keeping your hands down by the side, and the king of taking a nap on the middle of the canvas. Anderson Silva is my bonehead of the week.
My bonehead of the week is Miguel Falcao. Not even as much him as the fucking assholes that he got in a fight with. Holy shit. Whatever, the little push, half slap on the girl, I think that was pretty much harmless. You shouldn't do it either way, but I don't think it was that big of a deal. But when he got in the fight, these thugs come in and they start jumping people, and I guess he was distracted at that point fighting somebody else, but they had his buddy there. I'm not even sure what his name is. I know he's a fighter also, but he got hit in the head with a big fucking piece of wood or something, knocked him out, and they just continued to beat the shit out of him while he was knocked out. I mean, I can't count how many times they hit him afterwards, and then even later, after they did that to him, you see another guy run back into the picture and kick him in his head, and now the guy's in critical condition. He might not make it. Those guys are assholes. Mikel, you're a fucking asshole too, just for initiating something like this and letting your boy get beat down, and that's why he's my bonehead of the week.
Damn, yeah, I read about that. That's a pretty hairy situation. But I guess I gotta give it to Anderson Silva. I mean, the guy, by trying to mess around and clown with Weidman, himself lost the fight. You've seen it happen in other sports, whether Leon Letts dancing to a touchdown and fumbles the ball. Any sport, you've got stories like this, and yeah, so it was pretty easily my bonehead of the week.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with the same thing. You see it, as Jake said best, you see it in pretty much every sport at some stage. Somebody decides, I'm going to fool with this guy, and they pay for it. And this is exactly what happened. And when it happens, I guess on this show, we just say they're the bonehead. And that's what happened, man.
I'm going to vote on the UFC.com rankings. Whatever idiot put Weidman as interim champ and then number one with Silva as champ above him, I mean, that's ridiculous. So for me, it's the UFC.com rankings.
I'm going with Sports Illustrated. You guys are fucking idiots. I hope your publication fucking goes to shit and you somehow go out of business or something. Fuck you.
Yeah, sort of really taking the credit away from Weidman whenever you imply that it could have been a work. But it sounds like Anderson Silva is the bonehead of the week this week. Losing the belt to Chris Weidman at UFC 162. Speaking of that, we have 4 other main card fights in the prelims to talk about. Frankie Edgar defeating Charles Oliveira in that co-main event via unanimous judges' nod. It was a hell of a fight. Oliveira, in a losing effort, looked great, but Frankie Edgar is a son of a bitch. Even when he looks like he's lost the round, he roars back and wins the round by just flurrying guys. Before we talk about the implications of the fight, obviously before this fight, Edgar had fought in 7 consecutive title fights, but now it's back in the win column, looking to get himself another title fight. We will talk about the featherweight title picture afterwards, but what did you think of the fight, and what did you think of either guy, Jay?
I don't know how Oliveira was so in the fight. I think it's a reminder that Edgar really, he tries his best to be a finisher, but it definitely doesn't come natural to him. the fight was very fun to watch. I don't know how Oliveira was in the fight as much as he was. Maybe Oliveira's been working hard. I mean, he is only young, but maybe it's Edgar slipping as well. I don't think Edgar would be able. I don't think he's going to be as competitive as he was at lightweight, just purely because he hasn't got the speed and that sort of thing. We'll see. You know, this was a step down in competition. He's been fighting like we said, for 7 straight titles, something like that. We'll see how he fares with the top of this division. You know, the Swansons, the Mendes, the Lamases. We'll find out how he does against them. It's going to be interesting.
I think that Oliveira just impressed the hell out of me in that fight. You know, I know that it was a clear win for Frankie, but we had done a roundtable, me and Ray, earlier in the week before the fights, and I had said that Frankie was going to win this fight in the first round by knockout, because when Oliveira loses, he doesn't lose by decision, or it's not, you know, anything like that. He loses by fucking knockout. He gets knocked out every time he loses. And he's had such an up and down career, but it always looks like he wilts under the pressure when he faces the top competition. He can't handle getting hit by these guys. It just seems like he's done when he's in there with those guys. But he showed in this fight that I guess his chin has improved. He can take a punch now. He's got heart. You could tell he wanted to stay in the fight when he was in trouble, and I just think that he impressed the hell out of me. Frankie Edgar always impresses the hell out of me. He's got impeccable boxing skills. His footwork is amazing, and I think he'll always be one of the top pound-for-pound fighters. I love Frankie Edgar, and I can't wait to see Frankie Edgar versus Cub Swanson or Chad Mendes. I'm looking forward to one of those fights.
This was a strange one for me, because I was impressed with Oliveira. I mean, we all talked, Brooks mentioned it, we all talked about this fight, and we all felt this was a massive mismatch. And the fact of the matter was, when the fight played out, it wasn't a mismatch. It was a very close fight. Yeah, Edgar clearly won, but I wasn't impressed with Edgar. For me, Edgar's probably top 5 in the featherweight division, if not higher. He was facing a guy that's probably just inside the top 20. It shouldn't have been a competitive fight. He should have smashed Oliveira. Even if he didn't knock him out, he should have had him in so much trouble that Oliveira was hanging on. And the fact of the matter was, he didn't. Edgar cruised to a win, but it wasn't impressive in my opinion. He did what he had to. He did what he needed to do, but I didn't come away thinking, I can't wait to see Frankie Edgar fight next. That was amazing. I just think he won and that was it. And I've said before with other guys, it's not necessarily who they beat, it's how they beat them. And for me, Edgar won, but who really cares? Oliveira, really impressed with him. He showed a lot of heart. He got caught a few times. We've seen Oliveira just crumble in fights in the past when he's faced top level. I mean, he crumbled against Miller. He crumbled against Cub Swanson. His knockout against Cub Swanson was very strange because it seemed like a delayed reaction. But yeah, Edgar won, but I didn't come away. I wasn't impressed at all with Edgar.
Are you calling a work on that strange knockout?
Not a work, but bloody hell, it was weird.
Yeah, it was. All right, so what do we do with the UFC featherweight title picture? Right now we have Jose Aldo, who will be fighting the Korean Zombie. We don't know whether he's going to stay at 145 or move up to 155. For the sake of brevity, let's just assume he stays at 145. Currently, you have Clay Guida and Chad Mendes, who are going to be fighting at the end of next month. You have Edgar and Swanson now coming off wins. You have Ricardo Lamas, who beat Eric Koch earlier this year. What do you do with that title picture?
Oh man, this is a fantastic question. I guess you got, in my eyes, Pettis is the number one contender. He hasn't really beaten anybody to prove it, but well, in my eyes, he's walked home with the belt already. The fight hasn't happened, but he's walked away with it. Swanson's got to fight somebody like I think the Lamas fight makes sense, and then you've got of course you've got Guida and Mendes. The winner of that fight should probably fight Edgar. So there's a lot of names that have been thrown about here, and understandably, yes, the division is starting to get a bit log jammed, or whatever you like to call it. But I think I can fully see why, because most guys in that division have lost to Jose Aldo. I mean, there are new contenders, yes, but Swanson got knocked out in 6 seconds. Mendes took a knee to the face, and those are the two featherweights. And other than that, he's been fighting lightweights. You've got to remember in his last, I think it was is it his last 4 or 5 fights? He's fought 3 lightweights. He's fought Edgar. He's fought Kenny Florian, and he's fought, I can't even remember the other one, but there's one other lightweight who made the move down as well. I can't remember, but yeah. Right now, the division is really hotting up, and I think it's, in my eyes, it's the most stacked division right now.
We have to give the title shot to Ricardo Lamas, for fuck's sake, dude. This guy has beaten, one of the other top guys, and Cub Swanson is just looking absolutely terrific lately, and, Lamas finished him. He's beaten Hetsu Hiyoki, which obviously hasn't made much of an impact in the division, but I think he got the rip off against Clay Guida, and then he came and he just smashed Eric Koch. And he's on a 4-fight win streak. He deserves it. Like you were saying, Jay, Aldo's been fighting all these guys that are coming down from 155. We need, a guy that's earned his spot, that came up through the ranks at 145 to get a shot, and Ricardo Lamas is that guy. And I don't see any other person that they should give it to over him right now.
If I could pick the fight, I'd be picking Cub Swanson. I mean, Cub Swanson is on a hell of a run. I know he's got these losses, but these losses weren't, as far as I'm aware, weren't in the UFC. I know the Aldo one wasn't. I don't remember the Lamas loss. I'm going to guess that was WEC.
Lamas finished him in the UFC.
Was that they fought in the UFC? Okay, I apologise then. But the fights I remember are his fight against Ross Pearson, Dustin Poirier, obviously Dennis Seaver. They're all 3 top guys. Lamas is on a hell of a run as well, but for me personally, I'd like to see Cub Swanson get the rematch of Aldo.
For sure, yeah. I do agree with you, Brooks. I think Lamas has earned the shot. He beat Swanson, and Frankie and Cub have had their shots at Jose Aldo. Lamas hasn't. He beat Eric Koch, the guy who was being given a title shot a while ago. And I think Lamas should get it if Aldo stays around. If he moves on, then hell, let's put Lamas and Cub for the featherweight championship and give the first title crack of the champion to the winner of Frankie against the winner of Guida and Mendez, if all that makes sense. All right, let's move on. Mark Munoz defeating Tim Boetsch. He looked like a Mark Munoz 2.0. He now says, "Oh man, if Anderson doesn't want a rematch, I'd love a rematch." Is Mark Munoz a threat at the belt, Brooks?
No, I don't think he's a threat at the belt. As I've already said before, I don't see anybody besides Anderson that would have a chance against Weidman right now. Munoz did look excellent. And, I knew going into that fight he was going to be, the best Munoz that we've seen in a long time, just because, he had such a long layoff. I believe before that he was fighting injured, and he had that long layoff just to ensure that he was going to come into this fight as healthy as ever. And, I think that he's definitely got the potential to be, top 2 or 3 in the division, but I do not see him being able to take out the champion.
I was really impressed with Munoz in this fight. I think he looked phenomenal in this fight. He looked cut going into the fight, but the way he toyed with Boetsch and the ground and pound looked absolutely brutal. I think he is a threat to Weidman, to be honest with you. If they fight, I'd have Weidman to win. I think Munoz is definitely a threat. I'd like to see Munoz fight Costa Philippou. I mean, Philippou annihilated Boetsch even more impressively than what Munoz did. We're probably never going to see Philippou Weidman because we know they both trained together with Matt Serra and Ray Longo. But I think Mark Munoz and Costa Philippou would be a very interesting matchup.
As Rach has said about Philippou and Weidman, they no longer train together. Philippou has made the move. He saw the writing on the wall. I don't know. Maybe it was a few months back now. Philippou moved away. He didn't want to be associated with the Sarah team anymore. The Munoz thing, is he a threat to the belt? No. His chin is his weakness in my eyes, and that's always going to prevent him. I think the only current top, I think there are people who are a threat to the belt, but Munoz has had his chance, and I don't think it will be him. Oh,
it's back to me. Sorry about that. Mark, Boach is a son of a bitch, but I want to see Mark really crack a top 5 guy before I'm willing to say he's a threat at the title, because Weidman absolutely steamrolled him. All right, Tim Kennedy and Roger Gracie. This was not a very exciting fight. We'll talk about the boringness of it in a minute. But will Tim Kennedy ever be a title contender in the UFC, Ray?
This was a horrible fight. This was probably the only bad fight on the whole card. I mean, I watched it from top to bottom, as I'm sure most of you guys did. This was a really, really good card, but this was an awful, awful fight. Will he ever be a title contender? No, because it don't necessarily matter about winning. It's how you win. I've said this before. Dana White likes exciting fighters. We've seen it before. We've seen him say it to all these people on Ultimate Fighter. He likes exciting fighters. There's the odd exception, but Kennedy is not an exciting fighter. Even people criticise Georges St. Pierre, but I remember Georges St. Pierre before he was a champion, and he was an exciting fighter. He annihilated people. He finished Matt Hughes. He finished Sean Sherk. He finished Frank Trigg, and then when he got to the top, then he started playing safe. Tim Kennedy's already fighting boring. That was his UFC debut. No one's coming away from that fight saying, I can't wait to see Tim Kennedy fight next. I mean, I couldn't give a toss if he didn't fight again in the UFC. It was that bad of a fight. And the same with Roger Gracie or Roger Gracie. I don't care for seeing him fight again either, personally. The fight was absolutely awful.
Well, I enjoyed the fight because I had money on it. So the first round scared me a bit, but then the second round I was loving life, and the third round I was loving life some more. Maybe I was wrong to put money on it, but yeah, it made me enjoy the fight. I didn't think it was that boring. I thought I was worried for Tim Kennedy's sake because the leg kicks were working for him, but he wasn't throwing enough of them. The first round was Roger Gracie, it was a back and forth result as a result of that first round. But Kennedy could do it. Kennedy could be a title contender, but he's got to string some wins together, and he needs to work out what he's going to be good at, because that's what he seems to be worried about right now. Is he's a mixed martial artist, and some guys are unable to. When you are that sort of Forrest Griffin or Rich Franklin guy, it can come into the fact where do you want the fight to take place? Are you going to take them down? Are you going to try and submit them, or are you going to keep it on the feet? And when you fight somebody near the top tier, you're going to have issues because you might not have trained enough in the one area that you can't pull it off on. And I think that will be his weakness. But I didn't think that the fight was boring.
I completely agree with everything you said there, Jay. He definitely will not be a title contender when it comes to, the top 5 guys or so. He's going to always lose. He's not that great of a fighter. He's a really good fighter, but he just doesn't have the skill set, the tools to be able to take out the top guys. And as far as the boring stuff goes, I'm not really bored by too many fights anymore. And the GSP hate that you guys are spewing right now is it's ridiculous if you ask me. The Carlos Condit fight, I'm sorry to get off the subject here, but the Carlos Condit and GSP fight was one of the best of the year last year. And and as far as this fight, like I said, I'm not bored by too many fights. I'm intrigued by everything, and I like to see the strategic stuff play out. So no, he won't ever be a contender.
Brooks says no. All right. Like Ray said, it was a boring-ass fight. Tim had sort of made a splash recently as he compared UFC fighter pay to that of garbage men. He softened his stance afterwards, after I'm sure Dana called him up angrily. But, in all this fighter pay stuff, do you side with Tim in that these guys in the prelims need to be paid more? Or is Dana right saying, if they fight exciting fights, we give them more. If they go out and fight like Tim Kennedy did, we don't pay them much. I'm sort of in the middle. Guys should be incentivized to fight more exciting, but the fact that, some dudes on the prelims and FX fights walk away after travel, training expenses, all that stuff, walk away from a fight with only $5,000 or $6,000 before taxes, and you only can fight 2 or 3 times a year, so you need another job. That's a goddamn shame. Ray, what do you think about the whole fighter pay issue?
I disagree with you, Jake. To be honest with you, we had this conversation before with that idiot who was fighting in Brazil and was fighting on the prelims, put up a shit fight, and then moaning about the wage. I can't remember what his name was.
John Cholish.
Yeah, I mean, no one really cares who he was because he wasn't that good anyway. But the thing is, we all live to your means. If you're earning £200 a week, you can go out and you can afford to do a nice big shop and get all the nicest things in. If you're earning £100 a week, then you have to budget. It's the same with these guys. If you're good enough to earn the money, you'll earn the money, and then you can go out and you can go and fight on these cards abroad. You can go and you can pay for the best coaches and trainers. Blah 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 blah. If you're not earning the money, then you don't take a fight in Brazil because it's not cost efficient for me. You keep your fights in the US, or if you're in the UK, in the UK. Use a little bit of common sense with regards to the incentivization. At the end of the day, if you fight good, you get paid. And let's not forget as well, they don't just get their wages from these fights. They all get free clothing, they get, free supplements, whatever, which helps them with their training. They also get money, so people put their logos on. So to say they walk away with just their wage, that's naive as well, because, the wage, for a lot of these guys, I bet you the wage is probably the smallest part of what they actually earn. You've got your exception, but you look at, for example, the other week we had Sam Stout and James Krause. Now that was a pretty bad card. Now James Krause was on the prelims and probably, I don't know what his wage was, it probably wasn't that great. But because he put on a good fight, he pulled off a fantastic submission, he won 2 bonuses, so he walked away with probably over $100,000. He got that because he earned that. That card was awful, but he put everything on the line, he made his fight exciting, and he pulled off a beautiful submission, so therefore he walked away with the money. Tim Kennedy wants to moan about his wages, and to compare it to Dustbin, that's just absolutely disgraceful, because I bet you there's men out there that go out there and collect the rubbish, and they'd love to get paid $2,000 for doing a week's work or a night's work. They don't get paid that. They probably get paid that in a couple of months or in 6 weeks. So to say something like that is just completely ignorant. But Tim Kennedy needs to really kind of focus on making himself a better fighter, because the fight of the weekend, it's not going to entice him to get more money. And the fact he's blabbing his mouth ain't going to help him either, because if Tim Kennedy got cut now, I don't think too many people would care.
Fight pay is always going to be an interesting one. I mean, Ray did bring up some points, but then some guys, especially when you look at this whole Praetorian MMA thing, they now not allow Pretoria MMA to sponsor fighters anymore, because I think you've got to pay something like $50,000 per event if you're going to sponsor. So sponsors are going to lose interest pretty quickly unless you're a high-end company. I mean, the biggest issue you had was Rick Horn, who his sponsor cut him after he lost. And this is Rick Horn, he's fighting on the Bellator main card most of the time. He's main eventing. If you're on the prelims for the UFC, yeah, there are going to be sponsors out there, but they're not going to pay you that much when they've just got to pay you $50,000 to get their name on a shirt, or whatever that you won't even be wearing in the cage. That's why these fighters are so desperate to get these shirts on or their hats on. I kind of do see Tim's point. I think the garbage men thing is a bit of a joke, but Tim Kennedy is another guy who is he's training down at Jackson's, so the money thing is always going to be he's paying a lot of money for his fight camp. The whole thing about James Krause and Sam Stout, you're also relying on the other guy in certain fights, because you're going to get these. If you're fighting somebody like Chris Weidman, for instance, you're not going to be able to submit him. The same thing goes to Jacare and Damian Maia. So the submission out of the night bonus is out the window. There's things like knockout of the night bonus. If you're fighting like James Krause, his only hope was Sam Stout came to bring it. If you're fighting Nick Lentz, you're not really going to get, your only hope of a bonus is to finish the fight. And Nick Lentz has got a good chin. His submissions might not be there, but it is hard to get these bonuses, because it depends on, it's not just reliant on you wanting to go out there and put on a performance. It depends on the opponent you're fighting as well, which makes it hard to always guarantee your bonus. So yeah, the option is there, but I could very easily see why they cut the money on the bonuses to pay pay fighters more money. And in my eyes, that's probably a better call.
Just quickly, sorry, before Brooks jumps in, you're on about not being able to submit these guys, and you're obviously referring to their bout. We've seen high-level guys be submitted before, but I think a week ago you'd have told me that Chris Weidman couldn't win knockout of the night. and he just did. So I think your argument goes out the window there. There's always going to be guys that are going to get submitted. Jim Miller had never been submitted until he fought Nate Diaz, and then he got submitted and Nate Diaz won a bonus. So, it's not just down to the guys. You've got to go out there and you've got to perform and you've got to get ready. That fight of the weekend was boring because of both fighters, but Tim Kennedy played his part in that fight being boring as well.
Yeah, you make a great point there, Ray. But I think there's great points to be made on both sides, and I don't think everybody's always going to be happy. So just to go against Dana White here, and I know it was a long time ago, but I remember, and I was infuriated by it when I seen it. But when Matt Serra fought Matt Hughes, and on that same card, because Matt Serra and Matt Hughes got fight of the night on that card, which is just ridiculous. That was nowhere near a fight of the night, type of fight. But and on the same card, I don't remember who got knockout of the night or whatever, but Matt Brown had fought in Pete the Punching Bag Cell, and he had, Yves Levine was the referee. He had to knock out Pete Cell twice in that fight. He knocked him out once. Levine jumped in and acted like the fight was being stopped, and then for some reason he backed out and said that the fight should continue, and then Matt Brown had to go in and, knock him out again, which was just stupid. But either way, my point is that Matt Brown was on the undercard. He puts on exciting fights. He knocks people out. He's a finisher, and for some reason he didn't collect one bonus. He didn't collect knockout of the night bonus. He didn't collect fight of the night bonus. Yet on the same card, Matt Serra and Matt Hughes, which wasn't a good fight, collected a fight of the night bonus after they're already getting paid more than everybody on the fight card. So that doesn't make no sense to me. I think a lot of these times if these bonuses are given out, they're given out on, favoritism or because they're on the main card. I don't see a lot of the undercard guys getting bonuses, even though their fights are better a lot of the time. So that's something to say against Dana on that. But as far as Tim Kennedy, the guy got $90,000 for this fight, $60,000 straight up, $30,000 for the win. He does that 3 times a year, then there's no fucking garbage man on the planet that's getting paid more than Tim Kennedy, unless he's the owner of the company for these garbage men or whatever you want to say. Fuck Tim Kennedy. I've never liked the guy after he fought Robbie Lawler, came in talking some trash after that, trying to say that Robbie Lawler wouldn't stand and trade with him when Kennedy was trying to take him down the whole time. But that's just the type of person Tim Kennedy is. I think he's like a wannabe Chael Sonnen. He can't do it like Chael. I think his trash talk is garbage, no pun intended. But it's like I said, there's points either way. Tim Kennedy made a boatload of money there, and then, like you guys had said, the fight wasn't the most exciting fight that we've seen. So he really has nothing to complain about. If he's sticking up for some of the undercard fighters, sure, but I think that he was talking about himself a lot when he was bringing up fighter pay also. So, I don't know what the hell he's complaining about, but that's just, my outlook on the situation.
For sure. In the final main card fight, we'll talk about Cub Swanson defeating Dennis Seaver via TKO about halfway through the third round. Looking really impressive. He's won his last 5 since losing to Ricardo Lamas late 2011. 4 of those 5 by TKO or KO. And he's definitely in the mix in the title shot now. We did talk about the featherweight title picture. So instead of talking about that, what I'm going to ask is, will we ever see Cub versus Aldo 2? And if we do, would he last a full round? Jay? Because, for those who aren't aware of the first fight, he got knocked out in 8 seconds.
The reality of it is, in my eyes anyway, he's a professional boxer, so he should... I think what happened is the punch... it was the flying knee, wasn't it? The flying knee within 6 seconds, something like that. Had the fight have gone on, had that have happened in about, 10 minutes into the fight, or even a couple of minutes into the fight, he would have been ready, He would have already been punched in the face a couple of times, so he would have been a bit more adaptive. But it was the first punch. It really shook him off. It took him off guard. He wasn't prepared for it. And as a result, it cost him. Had he have been slightly more warmed up, it wouldn't have finished him, and we would have seen, probably in my eyes, a different result. He would have got finished probably eventually, but it wouldn't have been his chin given out. His ground game has improved. Fair play to him. So I don't know whether he would be submitted, but either way, I think that Aldo would beat him, and I don't see the fight happening. I think he'll get exposed at some stage down the line.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the fight will happen either. I think that he'll probably have to fight one of the other top 2 or 3 guys, and he'll end up losing, whether it's Frankie Edgar, because I think that's got a lot of potential to be one of the next scheduled fights, Edgar versus Swanson. Considering they're both fought on the same card and they're both coming off a win, it makes a lot of sense. And I think that Edgar would win that fight. I think it'll be an awesome fight. I think that, fight of the year contender, if it does happen. Those guys are both exciting. They put on a great pace. Personally, I think that Cub could win the fight, but personally I would pick Frankie Edgar to win that fight. So, if that was a number 1 contender fight, I don't think that he can make it past it anyhow. And eventually Aldo's going to move up to 155. So, in my mind, I don't see the fight happening.
First thing I want to say is this: I thought this fight was absolutely fantastic, and what this fight was doing as fight number 5 on the main card, I don't know. This fight should have been co-main event, in my opinion. Both these guys were ranked higher than Charles Oliveira, so for me, with them being close in the rankings, it should have been given more of a platform than the Edgar Oliveira fight. That's what I thought before the fight, and after seeing the fight, I think that even more. Will we ever see Club Aldo 2? Yes. Will he last a full round? Yes.
For sure. And I think he would too. Cub has evolved a whole lot since losing to Jose Aldo at WEC 41 summer 2009, about 4 years ago. All right, we do want to talk about the prelims as well before we get to guess that tweet. What stood out to you on the 6 prelim fights? You had at middleweight Andrew Craig defeating Chris Lieben via split decision. Storm and Norman Park defeating Kazuki Tokidome via unanimous decision. Gabriel Gonzaga and Edson Barboza both winning TKO victories against Dave Herman and Rafael Oliveira. Gabriel 17 seconds into the fight, Edson's via just vicious leg kicks. And the 2 Facebook welterweight matches, Brian Melancon defeats Seth Brzezinski via KO with a second left in the first round, and Mike Pierce somehow finding himself on a Facebook card, which was the biggest thing that stood out to me. How Mike Pierce, a guy who has literally since the last 5 years, since joining up with Zuffa, has gone something like 10-3. The first loss, a UD to John Fitch. Since then, since that fight in 2009, he's gone 8-2. His only losses, split decisions that could have gone either way against Josh Koscheck and Johnny Hendricks, a title contender and a top 10 guy, and you're putting him on the Facebook prelims. I mean, his last 4 opponents now: Carlos Hocha, Aaron Simpson, Seth Brzezinski, David Mitchell. Are they going to give him a decent opponent? He just beat Seth Brzezinski, and he's still got a better placement than him. He got the second Facebook fight. Does Zuffa hate Mike Pierce? I don't know what's going on there. But that stood out. Those Chris leg kicks by Barboza, the quick Gonzaga knockout, which Gabriel is sort of proving himself to be that gatekeeper of the heavyweight division, and Chris Lieben just coming out flat again like he did against Brunson. Another horrible style matchup for him. Who's first on this one? Brooks, what stood out to you on the prelims?
Well, I don't want to overlook the Brian Melican fight because he was obviously a pretty big underdog and a relative unknown going into that fight, and he looked spectacular. And Bagzinski just got hammered, and there was 1 second left in the round, and he ended up knocking him out. But I have to go with Edson Barboza, and just because, I wanted the sky's the limit for this guy. I can't wait to see him fight, a top 5 guy or even a top 10 guy. To be honest, I know we've seen him lose against Jamie Varner. Varner had him on the ropes, and he got him knocked down. And it was kind of weird to me. Varner had held onto the fence while he was punching him, and I thought that at that point Barboza could have swept him because he was trying to sweep him. He had hold of his leg, and he was pulling to sweep him, but at that point, Varner had a whole defense. No one ever raised a fuss about it or anything, but that stood out to me. But Barboza, man, with these leg kicks, is there anybody that can take those types of leg kicks? I mean, we've seen Benson Henderson use his leg kicks and just, fuck his opponent up the whole fight. And he doesn't have leg kicks like Edson Barboza does. And, obviously Edson Barboza is one of the top, I don't care what anybody says, he's one of the top 2 or 3 strikers in the division. I know Anthony Njokuani has really great, sharp striking. Those guys have fought before, and Barboza pulled out a close decision. And, another guy like John Makdessi who has just great striking also. But Barboza is undoubtedly one of the top strikers in the division. Who knows, maybe he'll come up against a really great wrestler and, get laid on. I don't know. He just impresses the hell out of me. He's a fun guy to watch, and, he stood out the most to me on the prelims.
I actually thought that all the prelims were good. I enjoyed every single prelim. I was really pleased to see Norman Park get the win, obviously with him being a UK fighter. I've interviewed Norman, but I got to meet him when I was doing the commentating in Ireland as well. So it was nice that I was pleased that he won, and I thought he looked really good. If I had to pick one person who stood out to me, I'm going to pick Gonzaga. I mean, I personally can't stand Dave Herman. I think he's one guy that does not belong in the UFC, and I think Gonzaga's shown that. I mean, it wasn't even a fight. I mean, he just seemed to knock him out with the first punch he thrown. And Gonzaga's strength's always been his ground game, and he still knocked him out with the first punch he thrown. So yeah, for me, the standout, I had to pick one moment. I'm going to go for Gabriel Gonzaga, and I really, really hope we don't see Dave Herman in the UFC again.
I loved the entire card, man. Mike Pierce, the fight. If some people were saying it was becoming a bit wall and stool, but that was because whoever the hell is fighting, I don't know, some bum, David Mitchell, he was able to stuff those takedowns, and that fight was becoming interesting. Pierce couldn't get the takedown, and then he hit him with a punch that Mitchell was looking the wrong way. So that was a fantastic fight. Like I said, I had money on that in a few fights on this card, so I was rooting. I was out my seat for that one. The Barboza knockout, he was pounding him with those, leg kicks and body kicks. Whoever the hell that another opponent who was a bum, whoever that guy was, he didn't see it coming. The whole undercard was fantastic, really. Of course, Gonzaga, Herman seemed like he's going to come out and throw some leg kicks, but didn't last long at all, really, because his chin didn't hold up. So not only does jiu-jitsu not work, apparently, but also not having a chin is another thing which you shouldn't have in the octagon. But whatever, I can't remember the rest of the card, but all I remember is I thought overall it was a fantastic event. Oh, of course, Andrew Craig, he looked phenomenal. Lieben should hang him up, man.
Yeah, Lieben was tweeting out the night of the fight. After the fight, I'll be back in training Monday, tweeting out at his Alliance MMA teammates. We'll see who he gets next. I think he's going to get another UFC fight. It'll be interesting if Dana White and Zuffa give him a stylistic advantage or disadvantage. That does it for our recap of UFC 162, and I believe, Ray, you have some tweets for us, and I'll pass it off to you for this week's edition of Guess That Tweet. Will I get my 13th win? Will Jay continue his reign of cheating? Will Brooks get his first win? Will Ray get a first win as a host? We'll see. Ray, it's all you.
Am I hosting this week? I thought...
Oh, you are, you son of a bitch.
I was going to go into a big line, then I heard the cheesy music, so I better shut up. Yeah, I'm the host this week. Right, there is a theme to this week, and it's a theme we haven't actually done before. I thought it'd be interesting. So the theme for this week is every answer is a former guest of MMA Mental.
Ooh.
Okay?
I was hoping it was I was hoping it was a gay fighter, because, Liz Carmouche and Nick Ring, that's it.
And JG. Right then. Silence. We'll go with so that is the theme for this week. They are all former guests from the MMA Mental podcast. So, tweet number 1. We've got 6 tweets, so we'll do 5. We'll have a tiebreaker if we need it, and if we don't need it, we'll just do it for fun. This is also a good way for me to do some cheap plugs for my show. We won't mention that. Tweet number 1. Not a good idea to tell your GF that you have a surprise for her coming soon. Tell me, please. Oh my God, instant child, laugh out loud. Was it A, James Thompson, B, Mike Big Rhodes, C. War Machine, or D. Rob Sinclair?
I guess I'm first then. I don't follow War Machine. Rob Sinclair, him and his girlfriend have a rocky relationship. James Thompson, I know they've been dating for ages, so he might be popping another question. So for that reason, I'm going to go with James Thompson.
I'm going to go with Rob Sinclair on this one.
I'm going to go with James Thompson. He was the first guy you said, and after you read the tweet, I could totally see Thompson saying something like that, so I'll go with Colossus.
Okay. It was not B, Mike Biggie Rhodes, and it was not Rob C4 Sinclair, and it was not James the Colossus Thompson. It is a point to me. It was War Machine.
The hell, he has a girlfriend? Really?
Maybe it's somebody you met in prison. It's not really a girl. Right. Option number 2. Watch. I hope War Machine ain't listening. Watch.
Motherfucker!
Watch Pumping Iron for the first time. At Schwarzenegger had a great attitude. Think I'll get his biography. Was it A. Brad Pickett, B. Bruce Buffer, C. Phil DeFries, or D. Tom Watson?
I'll go with Bruce Buffer.
Can you repeat what the tweet was? I'm sorry.
Yeah, watching Pumping Iron for the first time. At Schwarzenegger had a great attitude. Think I'll get his biography.
Tom Watson.
I don't even know what this watch Pumping Iron thing is. I'm worried that Jake will win this week, so I will go with whatever Jake said.
Which is Bruce Buffer.
Yeah, I'll go with that. Actually,
Okay.
Brad Pickett. Why not Brad Pickett? Go on, I'll mix it up.
Right, it was not Bruce Buffer. It was not Tom Watson.
If it's Pickett, he fucking Googled that shit.
It was not Brad Pickett. It was Phil DeFries. It is 2-0 to the host.
Oh my god.
Hey!
I couldn't see Bruce Buffer watching it. I was
I put him in there because I've interviewed him. No, I put him in there because he's obviously half on about his own autobiography, isn't he? Anything you see on Twitter, it's for the autobiography. So, okay, number 3. Balls are overrated, though. I'm happy to have small balls. They are less of a target in combat, and small balls make your ween look bigger. Laugh out loud. Was it? Same options as answer number 1. A. James Thompson. B. Mike Biggie Rhodes. C. War Machine. Or D. Rob C4 Sinclair.
all I know is that War Machine's done a lot of porn, so he's probably looking at his balls and looking at other people's balls. You know, I'm going to go with War Machine on this one.
Look, I don't know. I guess I got to go with War Machine also.
Would you read the tweet once more?
Yeah, you just want to hear me say balls again, don't you?
Yeah.
Balls are overrated, though.
Oh yeah. Say it
I'm
again.
happy to have small balls. They are less of a target in combat, and small balls make your ween look bigger. Laugh out loud.
Well, he said they make your wing look bigger, and I'm pretty sure that's a
W-E-N.
your ween. I still don't hear ween often in the U.S. So Thompson, Sinclair. I'll go with Colossus again.
Okay. It was not Mike Biggie Rhodes, and it was not Rob C4 Sinclair, and it was not Colossus. It was War Machine. Brooks and Jay are on the scoreboard.
Woo!
You threw me off with that ween. I definitely thought, after I thought about it for a minute, it had to be one of the UK guys.
We don't use that word either, so I don't know what you're on
That's an
about.
American word, ween.
I've lived in America for a while, and I've never heard anybody use the word ween.
America's
Well,
a big
War
place.
Machine did, so you know.
Yeah, and he is American. Right, number 4 then. So what this is a fan asking a question. The person answering the question retweets with the question and puts their answer in, okay? So I'm going to say fan asks, and then I'm going to put they answer. So that's what the tweet is. So fan asks, do you know if you're going to fight at the UFC England event? They answer, hope so, got business to take care of first. Was it A. Tom Watson, B. Ross Pearson, C. Brad Pickett, D. Luke Barnett?
I don't know. Tom Watson.
I'm gonna go with Luke Barnett.
I thought Watson was fighting later, so I don't know when that is, or whether the contract's signed, but maybe it's that. Is he fighting later? For that reason, who else was there? Brad Pickett? I guess, yeah, Brad Pickett. We'll go with Brad Pickett.
Okay. It was not Ross Pearson. It was not Brad Pickett. It was not Luke Barnett. It was Tom Kong Watson. You all have 1 point each with me on 2.
Last tweet in regulations next, right?
Yeah, this is the last one in regulation, and then it's whoever. If you get it right, you'll draw level with me, and then if we go into a tiebreaker, you can have 2 and leave me with 2 answers. Okay, number 5. I don't want to live. I don't want to die. When I look at the way things are, I just want to cry. It's cheesy as hell. So that is. I'll read that again. I don't want to live. I don't want to die. When I look at the way things are, I just want to cry. The options are, remember, these are all former guests of the MMA Mental podcast. A. Chris Lieben. B. Matt Brown. C. James Thompson. D. Ryan Couture.
Right, could you read the people again, please?
Yeah. Chris Lieben, Matt Brown, James Thompson, Ryan Couture.
I will go with Ryan Couture.
James Thompson.
What were the other 2 left? Because I'm just going to pick one out of those, so all of us have like a 1 and 4.
Chris Lieben and Matt Brown.
Oh man, I don't think I could see Lieben saying that. Matt Brown. Fuck it, it's probably wrong, but I'll take Matt Brown, I guess.
Okay. It was not Chris Lieben. It was not Ryan Couture. It was not Matt Brown. It was the Colossus. Brooks draws level.
Oh my god, well done, Brooks. Fair play, man.
So we'll go into a tie break. I'll let Brooks choose 2 answers. You 2 can then pick an answer just so you can have a pick, and then I'll take the 2 that Brooks doesn't pick. See who the winner's going to be. Remember, these are all former guests, former people that have been on the MMA Mental podcast. My new fave song, Mariah Carey featuring Miguel Beautiful. Check this shit out. Watch the video. Mariah is looking fine. Damn. Was it Ray Sefo, Bjorn Rebney, Tyson Fury, or Patrick Johnson? AKA Human.
I'm gonna go with. Do I get to go first, or you want these other guys?
Yeah, you go first. You get 2 answers, Brooks.
I'll take Tyson Fury and T Money.
You 2 can pick just for fun.
I'm taking P Money.
Tyson Fury.
I'm going P Money.
I'll go Tyson Fury.
Sorry. Okay, Jake's got P Money. Jay's got Tyson Fury. Brooks is the winner this week. It wasn't Bjorn. It wasn't Ray. I just wanted to put him in there. It wasn't P Money. It was Tyson Fury. Brooks, well done.
Thank you.
So, do I get 2 points and draw second, or what? Hang on.
You were in that final round for sympathy.
Oh, what? So I don't get the extra point. This is like the first week I've ever come third, and I think I came joint second then.
Third.
Brooks, you have a victory speech for us?
Oh man, I'm just so proud, and I'm happy. And you guys, I think from now on, I'm probably going to win the rest of these. Now that I finally got the first one out of the way, it's just going to get easier and easier. So good luck next time, fuckers.
Hell yeah, Brooks with his first Guess That Tweet victory. He will be back in a couple weeks when we do the roundtable again. We got about 15 minutes left, so we'll go over 5 fights that were scheduled since we've been gone, and then play this out. We'll go over the fights chronologically as they're going to happen. We thought we were going to see Jose Aldo and Anthony Pettis. Anthony Pettis pulled from the fight with a knee injury. The Korean Zombie steps in to face him at UFC 163 August 3rd in Brazil. Who you got? I think this is a much, 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 much easier fight for Jose Aldo stylistically. And just the level he's at. I say Aldo has no problem dispatching the Zombie.
I actually agree with what Jay was saying. I think Pettis would have beat Aldo. I think Korean Zombie's fantastic, but I think Aldo beats Korean Zombie.
Aldo's going to kill him.
I gotta love the underdogs going into these kind of fights. You can't underestimate the Korean Zombie. He got underestimated, I think, in the Poirier fight, and he came out and won that fight handedly. And Aldo's going to win, but I think the Korean Zombie has a better chance than most people are trying to say. He's too well rounded just to throw him completely out of the picture. He's got good striking and a good ground game. So if Aldo comes in underestimating him like the rest of the world, I think we could possibly see a new champion. But I'm going with Aldo.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize I was back up. All right, yeah, we're seeing two fights in Brazil, actually, within about a month of one another. UFC 163, headlined by Aldo and Zombie, August 3rd, and UFC on Fox Sports 1-3. That's how I'm going to call them, because now we have UFC on Fox Sports 1, and then the number of the card. It'll also be known as UFC on Fox Sports 1, Glover Teixeira versus Ryan Bader. That's also going to be in Brazil, I believe, in Belo Horizonte. Who you got in this one? Glover Tex, he did look a little flat against Rampage, but I think that was more because Rampage didn't want to brawl with him. I think Bader will be more willing to strike, and I think Teixeira gets one more step closer to a title shot. Jay?
I think they've given Teixeira or Bader here because they think that Bader's going to wrestle him and test his wrestling. Bader's one of these guys with bad fight IQ, so I think he's going to stand with him, and Teixeira's going to take it. The thing that does interest me in this fight is that it is 5 rounds, and 5 rounds are long fights. If they go all out, if Teixeira goes all out and looking for the finish, could Bader, when he's tired in the later rounds, out-wrestle him? It can be done, but it is in Brazil, and you never pick against a Brazilian in Brazil. That's what we've learned.
I agree. You can't pick against the Brazilian in Brazil, but I disagree about the part about Bader having the bad fight IQ and trying to stand with Glover, because we've seen him wrestle the guys that he had to wrestle in the past and pull out some decision victories on points, and Nogueira stands out in that one. But you got to go with Glover here. I think it's going to be similar to stylistically a lot of the fights that Chuck Liddell had in his prime when he was fighting wrestlers. I think it'll be a lot of sprawl and brawl, and just he's going to end up getting a knockout probably in the first or second round.
Yeah, I've got Glover to win this fight as well. Bader's definitely capable because he's always got that punch. I mean, he could lose the first few rounds and land with that punch. We've seen that happen before in fights. But I think Glover looks on another level at the minute, and I'm waiting to see him. He's really starting to step up now and face higher level. But I think Glover gets another impressive win.
Glover with another impressive win, getting him one step closer to that title shot. Another fight on that card that'll probably be on the main card. It might even be the co-main event. A middleweight scrap between Yushin Okami and Ronaldo Jacare Souza. This is very interesting. Both of these guys are so adept. Jacare obviously in jiu-jitsu and Okami in judo. Who you got in this one? I think it's going to be real close, but I actually am leaning toward Yushin Okami. Brooks?
I got to go the other way. I'm going to go with Jacare. I think he's the more well-rounded fighter of the two. I just think he's got more tools at his disposal. Okami's shown, some good wrestling in the past, and that he can take fighters down and grind out decisions or whatever. But I think that it could go the exact opposite there. I think Jacare could get some takedowns here and work his way to either a submission or a decision victory. Either way, I think Jacare's the favorite here, and I'm gonna pick him to win this fight.
I think on paper this is a really, really fantastic fight. I can't wait to see this fight. I mean, Yushin Okami's style is normally to take somebody down. He holds up against the fence on the ground and he beats them up, and he does it good. Jacare's style is obviously take someone down, submit. Jacare is one of those guys who can genuinely fight from his back. I think I'm really, really excited to see how this fight plays out, but I think Jacare is going to pull off a submission. I'm pretty sure we haven't seen Okami submitted in the UFC before, but I think this is the time. Jacare is going to pull off something crazy, and he's going to tie Okami up in knots.
If Okami decides he's scared of Jacare's ground game and he keeps it on the feet, then I think Jacare will knock him out with the Muay Thai. And if Okami wants to take him down, then he's going to get he's going to find a way to sweep or submit him. Akami's going to be in trouble in this fight. And the fact is, in Brazil, makes me lean to the fact that Jacque's going to hurt him. And, he might be able to get in his guard and start grinding him when the whole crowd starts cheering and they start booing the fact that Akami's not doing anything. It's just going to pump up Jacque when they do stand up, or when Akami makes a mistake. Something bad is going to happen to Akami that night.
For sure. Let's keep it moving on to UFC 166. A couple fights we're going to see there. Starting off with Nate Marquardt and Hector Lombard at welterweight on that card in Houston, October 19th. Who you got in this one? I bet both guys wish they could just make a gentleman's bet and fight it at middleweight. But Marquardt has shown he's pretty decent at welterweight. I just don't know how Lombard's going to make that cut to 170. He already looks very drawn out at 185. He's going to have to lose a lot of muscle mass. Maybe, I don't know, maybe steps in leaner, maybe has better cardio. But I'm leaning toward Marquardt just because I'm so unsure of this weight cut for Hector Lombard.
I've always been a really big fan of Nate Marquardt, and I haven't been impressed with him since he come back to the UFC. Watching the way the Ellenberger fight played out, it really took me by surprise. I think Lombard comes in with power and knocks him out early. I think if he connects the way that Ellenberger connects, and we know Lombard's capable of that, I think he'll blast through Nate Marquardt personally. So I hope Marquardt wins. I've always liked Marquardt, but I'm leaning towards Lombard to get a spectacular knockout.
It's an interesting fight. I think at middleweight, the Marquardt he'd be screwed, but at welterweight, Lombard's going to look, he's just not going to look right. And Marquardt, although he got destroyed by Ellenberger, Lombard won't be able to do it at the newfound weight. I think he's going to come out rusty. He might blow his whole gas tank just walking down to the octagon. And yeah, I'm picking Marquardt. He should be able to keep his distance like he did in the Woodley fight. And yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame because Lombard at 185 would murder him.
Yeah, I agree with that. In that at 185, Hector Lombard has a way better chance there. But I also agree with Ray when he said that Hector's going to come out, aggressive at the beginning, and I think that's going to be the key here, because obviously him fighting down at 170 for the first time, he may have fought previously earlier in his career, but for the first time in a while anyway, him coming out. He's going to have to be aggressive. I think that's a smart way to beat Marquardt. You come out and you put it all in out there on the first round, and you got a good chance of knocking him out early. But if he can't knock him out early, the cardio could be a huge issue here, just because of the weight cut. And like Jake was saying about him already having a lot of muscle at 185, and it's going to be a hard cut, I believe, also. So I think cardio could play an issue if he can't take it early. But I do think he comes out and he ends it early. I think he comes in the first round. He's aggressive and he gets a knockout.
All right, and finally, UFC 166, we also see a lightweight match between Gil Melendez and Diego Sanchez. Wait, is that Diego Sanchez? I don't think I ever can think of Diego Sanchez without thinking of that walkout where he just walked out saying yes over and over. He's known to have those pumped up walkouts. He seems like an absolute lunatic, and he will be facing the guy who just fought for the title, Gil Melendez, also on this Houston card. Who you got in this one? I have Melendez. I think he's going to be a challenger for the belt for the next 5 years. The dude is absolutely, he's well-rounded standing up. He's an absolute phenom, and he can keep it standing up against the guy if he wants to. I think Sanchez is in for a long night against Gil. Jay, who you got?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think Melendez should be able to do what he's got enough tools at the disposal. The only time this fight is even going to be competitive is if Diego Sanchez somehow Wines on top of him, then the fight could be interesting then, because Diego Sanchez on top is a scary thing to happen, but I don't see it happening. And I think on the feet he'll hurt him. You've got to remember that Gilbert Melendez is only just starting to work out that you can throw elbows as well, and that's going to be a scary thought for somebody like Sanchez.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys here. It sucks for Diego because I've always been a Diego fan. He's got a lot of haters, and he's just a weird guy in general, but he, more often than not, he comes in and he puts on a very exciting fight. And, I just think Gilbert Melendez is obviously on another level. He's definitely one of the top 2 or 3 in the division. Diego didn't look so great against Gomi, and I actually, even though I picked Diego to win that fight, I actually thought he lost that fight against Gomi, and he kind of got gifted a decision there. But as I was saying, Gilbert's on another level. He's one of the top 2 or 3. Jake said that he's probably going to be a title contender or a champion, for a long time to come. Diego's not going to go out, easily. I don't think Gilbert can finish Diego, but I do think Gilbert has all the right tools to beat just about anybody in the division, including Diego.
I think I'm a fan of both guys. I like Diego Sanchez, but personally, I felt that Sanchez in his last fight, I didn't think he won, and I'm referring to the Takanori Gomi fight. I thought Gomi won that fight. I thought it was a gift decision personally. Melendez is obviously top tier of the division. I think it will be a close fight. I think it will go the distance, but I think Melendez will beat Sanchez. But I think it will be an exciting fight to watch.
Yeah, that is going to be an absolute war. I'm really looking forward to that fight. Thanks for tuning in to the Roundtable. We will be back in 2 weeks, July 23rd, that Tuesday. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, the MMA Podcast. Visit MMApodcast.com. Ray, you want to throw your plugs out again?
Yeah, check out MMA Mental. We've had some great interviews over the last few weeks. We spoke to the likes of Ross Pearson, Stipe Miocic. This week I'll be speaking with John Anik. You can chat with him tomorrow. Ian Freeman gave me his inside take on Ken Shamrock, ducking him again for the 3rd time, which was quite interesting. Also, for any of those people that like a little bit of fantasy MMA, I've set up a page on Facebook called UFC Games. We're only just started out. There's about 100 people on there at the moment. But we're just running different fantasy games related to UFC. So if you like fantasy MMA, it's free to join. It's just good fun. Just come and check it out.
Jay, you have any plugs? Where do we find the early stoppage? Where do we find you on Twitter?
Well, you find me on Twitter at J_Jeans, I hope. The early stoppage has not been running for, I think, about 3 weeks, I'm afraid, and it will continue the drought of early stoppages because, the Anderson Silva loss, it's clear cut, so there can't be any early stuff. No, I'm just kidding, guys. It's a podcast I do, but right now it's on debate because, not under debate, it's on a sabbatical because I'm too busy. I'm really sorry, guys, and I don't think I'm going to be on the next roundtable either. So check me out at Twitter, as I said, at J_Jeans if you want to hear what I've got to say, although most of the stuff I say is crap.
Yeah, you can check me out at the MMA Addiction on Twitter. Like I said, we haven't been very active lately. We have to get on top of that. But you can also hit us up on Facebook. It's the MMA Addiction. And as I said at the beginning of the podcast, check out my man Cracker Stew on Reverb Nation. He's got some really good shit. And thanks, guys, for letting me on the show. It was a good time.
Thank you for coming on. Thank you, the listener, for listening. We'll be doing the Word on the Street later tonight and the MMA Podcast on Wednesday and another Word on the Street on Thursday. We did a post-fight podcast right after the post-fight press conference Dana did. You can follow all that on our Twitter, like I said before, the MMA Podcast. We really appreciate you tuning in, and until next time, we go.
Stay black.
These idiots caught up in all their ignorance. 2 clans fighting under the same banner. We all got love for this ground game, and that's all that matters. In the balance of the teachings of the grandmaster. I'm trying to master the system, that's what I'm after. And stay true to the craft.